Welcome to Humans of Fintech, the podcast where I share the inspiring stories of diverse leaders bringing equity to financial systems through fintech. I'm Nicole Casperson. Liang, thank you so much for joining me on Humans of Fintech. I'm so excited to have you in the studio wearing the Fintech is Femme colorway on brand. Thank you so much for being here.
I wanted to represent, and I wanted to show up for you in another way, an outfit choice.
Oh my gosh, well, thank you. And Liang, you have shown up for me actually in a lot of ways. When I first launched Fintech is Femme before, well, back then it was What the Fintech, right? I mean, honestly, you were one of the first people in the space to really reach out to me and just be like, I appreciate badass women doing badass things in this space and carving out places for themselves. And yeah, I just feel like then we created a friendship, through that. But just thank you. It takes someone reaching out and making me feel comfortable to be in this space. Because when I first got here, it was hard. It's still hard, but definitely at the top, it was hard.
I feel, yeah. And I'm going to have, I hope you appreciate another fangirl moment here. But when I first saw online what you were building with the Fintech, now Fintech is Femme, I was absolutely blown away by just your courage and just your conviction and your openness to share your story, and also just creating a platform for others that don't look like the majority to tell their story. Like, it's a huge point of inspiration for me in my daily work for my clients, but also my own personal mission too.
Right.
And oh God, it was awesome. Especially since I remember I LinkedIn messaged you at like 10 p.m. I think on like a Thursday night, and you responded within like an hour.
I do what I can. Things have changed. It's been a year and a half now, and I'm probably not nearly as good. Right. But I mean, thank you. You're reminding me I will get to my LinkedIn DM, I swear. But a lot has changed for both of us in that time. A lot more projects to be had and growth.
Yes.
So thank you. And let's talk about how, the alignment there, right, of what you've built with Vansary and just kind of your trajectory. But to start at the beginning, give us the Liang breakdown. Like, where does your story into the fintech space, where does that intersection kind of begin for you?
That sounds good. So I have a tendency of drawing out like my origin story. So
that's okay. Go for it.
Using the least amount of words that to describe myself, I would say that I am Chinese by birth. I am New Mexican by upbringing, which means I love a breakfast burrito, but also I like the mountains and I have a fine appreciation for a good skincare routine.
Yeah.
But also I am now a mother, I'm a wife, and I am a founder, and I am a hype woman. So that's kind of how I describe myself. But in terms of how I got into financial services and fintech in particular, this wasn't like an area of the world that I was totally unfamiliar with. I grew up in China when it was still considered a developing country. It meant that instead of having a shower at home, we went to the bathhouse once a week. And it was totally normal for me to just run free in our neighborhood and play in construction sites in China, because that was just what the world looked like then. And to fast forward to our life in New Mexico and the U.S. overall, I am an immigrant. My family, we immigrated to the U.S. back in the late 90s and settled in New Mexico, where my parents started to build their life as acupuncturists. So they opened up 2 acupuncture clinics while I was in high school. And so I got a taste of the entrepreneurial journey, and that really inspired me to get into business overall. It was either the family business or if it was going to be business.
Those are the options typically. Also with Asian parents, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It was like a doctor or lawyer. And I was like, I don't want to do either.
Yeah.
So I'll just run the business behind.
Yeah, entrepreneur.
Yeah, exactly. But I didn't really know what the entrepreneurial path looked like. Didn't really excite me. I wanted to work in corporate America. I wanted to work in financial services that was my goal for a really long time. Kind of fell into fintech. I got into fintech when I was 19 years old, working as a marketing intern, making 100 cold calls to mom and pop companies, but all the way to corporations like 3M about their factoring and receivables financing needs.
Wow.
Yeah. So did that for about 3 years. Like, talk about resilience building, right?
A necessity in fintech.
Yes, definitely. So got me really interested in the world. And even though conceptually and in textbooks, finance didn't make sense to me since we never talked about it growing up, but just seeing it actually live in the world and just the nuances and the depth of it and the size, the sheer market size of it and the impact of it, oh my gosh, that's really what really inspired me to get into the space. So that and, inability to really be a marketer for a dump truck manufacturing company in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, were the inflection points, I would say, in my younger life that really propelled me into my master's of finance and now financial services. And so this is really a story that I don't share with a lot of people. And I'm very happy to be able to share it with you today.
Yeah. I mean, and how does that tie into the interest in, PR and media, telling people stories?
It goes back to representation. And this is a topic that you and I have touched upon, in our conversation and so much of the work that we do. But, growing up, never saw anybody who looked like me in the media. Things are starting to change now with Michelle Yeoh and the cast of Everything Everywhere All at Once, just getting the recognition that it deserves this year. But, I never saw myself. And so much of my life was about assimilation. It was about being more like the majority. It was about like speaking and dressing and talking and acting like somebody that I would say isn't 100% me. And I think I need to pause for a second.
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah.
I think same. I grew up in predominantly white spaces. You spend a lot of time trying to create a version of yourself that is as close to proximity to what is considered the most professional, smart, good, i.e. as close to white facing as possible. I mean, how long did I have blonde hair for? Or how much did I try to emphasize certain elements of myself so that I would be taken more seriously or get that opportunity? But yeah, I think that's a completely, unfortunately, a normal thing that a lot of, honestly, my listeners have to go through before they get to the step of being their authentic self,
right?
Which is a little bit unfortunate. I would love to create a world where you didn't have to go through that, but that's kind of where we're at today.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think looking back about 20 years or so, I didn't understand then the impact that not having accurate or just representation in general in the media would actually mean for me, for my career, and now kind of looking ahead to the next generation, how it will impact them. And there were moments in my personal life as well as professional life where things were just unfair. There were, there was discrimination, there was harassment, there were times when my name wasn't even shortlisted for a promotion, where I internalized that then and didn't realize that it had to do with more than my capabilities or what I brought to the table as a worker overall. And really, it wasn't until, the past 5 or 6 years, really, where I started looking more deeply into this space that I really recognized just the value of representation and how if people are not seeing somebody who looked like me able to lead teams and to do the things that are very much necessary, they're never going to think about me.
Right.
And so what I've learned in my recent work is that Asian Americans, in particular women, are not seen as leaders. I think the stat is 1 in every 124 Asian women in the workplace is a leader.
Oh.
And to contrast that number, it's about 1 in every 50 white man is in a leadership position. And so understanding the fact that if we as a part of the non-majority group that are trying to work towards leadership, and then also those who are in leadership positions making decisions about who are the next generation of leaders, how are we able to, one, see ourselves in those roles and want to work towards those roles if we're not seeing others that are coming before us that look like us? And then how do those in decision-making roles see those that don't look like them able to kind of succeed in those roles and be able to kind of see value, I guess, in general.
Right. Well, and in particular, it's very specific to the Asian American culture, where if we aren't seen or we're not shortlisted for that promotion, we are really culturally trained to just internalize that and then figure out what's wrong with us, right?
And keep working harder.
And keep working, because I didn't work hard enough. Well, keep putting your head down, keep working harder. And, I think
I define that as a PR problem.
Yeah. No, I mean, I define it as we have a narrative problem, which is Fintech is Femme, Vansary.
And this is where PR comes in.
Yes. So keep going on that.
That is the inspiration for Vansary. And so, I hustled so hard. I worked so hard in my corporate life and just in everyday work. I mean, I had 3 jobs in college. That's a conversation for another day. But I've always worked.
Yeah.
And it's a part of my DNA to work and to hustle and to work hard. And finally, it burnt out. I burnt out in 2019. And I took a few months off. And after taking a little bit of a breathing room, I was like, what do I want to do? And I was like, I have no idea. So I was like, I'll start freelancing for a little bit. But that was really when I started kind of wanting to dig deeper into my community to really reconnect with my Chinese self, with my inner Chinese girl. And once I started doing that, it was like I started to have my eyes were open to just the amount of the lack of that
also the
exists
possibility,
Yes, but also there's a huge possibility. And it unfortunately coincided with COVID-19. And the fortunate part of it was that it validated so much my experience. Just the amount of Asian hate that existed, that happened, that still happened on a day-to-day basis. It really opened my eyes even further to just the amount of work that needs to be done and the opportunity there is for us to kind of carve out this space even further for ourselves. And so officially launched Vansary in the middle of 2020 in the height of the pandemic, from home after having some time to kind of do some internal work, and just double down and led with conviction around the fact that underrepresented individuals and women, that includes Black, Latin, and Asian, and we just need more representation overall. We need to be changing that narrative. We need to PR ourselves. We just need to be doing a lot more of the work that the majority is already doing.
Right. Well, and we need people that are actively building companies that help us do that and get there and teach us how to tell our stories and teach us how to rewrite narratives, because we were not taught to do that. Back to, what you're sharing about your story, and both of us have experience, right? We're used to assimilating. So why would we have grown up knowing how to share our stories? We don't, and so we need literal. It is work. It's why you and I have jobs. It's because there's a clear need there,
right?
And there's this, I think, idea that if that you need to. To be able to cater to this audience, I think there's okay, I'm sorry, I might need to cut this part out. I'm trying to say there tends to be this idea that if you need to, I can't, blah, 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 blah. Who am I? I'm resetting myself. So let's just go back to like kind of, so you launched in 2020 when, and Vansary, does Vansary focus specifically on Asian American clients? Is that like your main focus, or is that kind of your main focus? And then you also help literally all sorts of different types of people. Like talk to us about like the business.
So we're very open.
Okay.
So Vansary works with female founders, companies that are founded by minorities, but also we work with companies and investors who are also working to build a more inclusive as well as sustainable future. Because even though we as underrepresented individuals, not that I love that term, but we who are not the majority, we have our own work that we need to do, but we also need to create allies and sponsors, and we need to also normalize the conversation on the other side too, and help build a community around us so that we can all collectively work towards just a better future in general. And I think that there is a lot of elevation that needs to be done for those who are not the majority, but also like we all have a collective responsibility to changing just the overall.
How are things going though? So like Vansary is now 3 years?
Yeah, 3 years.
3 years old?
3 years old.
How old's Olivia?
Italian. Olivia's 20 months. So if you do the math, so we pretty much, it was like renovated my apartment. I got pregnant and I doubled down on Vansary all pretty much within like a 4-month period.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so we're a founder, CEO of your own company. We're relatively new mom, and we're changing and rewriting the entire narrative of the financial services and fintech industry. I mean, how are you doing?
I'm okay.
You're okay.
My skin routine has definitely suffered, and so has my workout regimen.
Oh my gosh. But I mean, kind of back to, what you're doing in the PR space. I mean, no one else is really having this very direct focus from
That's
in
correct.
a sense from what
Yes.
you're seeing. I mean,
That's correct.
Yeah. How is it evolving for the clients that you have been kind of working with this whole time? Like how is it going? Like the process of kind of working with someone and being like, okay, I understand as well that you've had to assimilate for a lot of your life. How do you change the, narrative in the story? Especially because like as amazing as like Michelle Yeoh is in that movie, it's more of a recognition of we have so much more to go.
Yes. Absolutely. So I think that working with the founders that I've worked with, everybody has a little bit of a different story to tell, and PR is it's an exercise of self-reflection. It is a lot of internal work. It's easy to kind of examine the business and to say, like, this is what makes us unique. This is why we're awesome. This is how we differentiate from our competitors. But there is no clear SWOT analysis for your personal journey. You can't go into it and be like, this is what makes me different. This is the value that I add to the world. And this is why people should care. Like, that's a very hard journey to kind of take somebody through if they haven't done the work themselves. And so I think that for a lot of the founders that I work with, we're still very much trying to build on, I would say, like the business trajectory and the growth momentum. And it's rare that I have a founder who very much is focused on the community about the amplification, like directly, like wanting that to be one of their messaging pillars. But the thing that we're kind of overlooking is that any representation, any increase in representation in the media is increasing the share of voice for our community. And that's a huge plus. That's a huge positive because it will signal to future investors and to future leader makers that we're good at being leaders. And so these stats are now coming out about how, Fortune 500 companies, if there's a woman CEO, they're actually more profitable than the men-led one. I can't wait until we have a study that show Asian founded and built companies are more successful, have better control over profitability than just overall, the overall market. We've seen that even in the small business space. So I've worked with a number of startups that have focused on financial offerings for the small business space. So I've spent many hours diving deeply into the Small Business Bureau databases. I admit I'm a nerd for numbers. And it's so interesting when you start to unpack just like the number of businesses founded by women and men, different minority groups, how successful they are. And Asian-owned businesses are actually one of the highest grossing revenue type of businesses compared to any other minority group. That in itself is powerful.
Yeah. Well, and it's back to the opportunity, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like we're in this place where we're getting more aware of the lack of representation. I mean, we're aware, but spreading that message around, particularly for the Asian American community. And then amplifying the fact that this is a lucrative opportunity. Like there is money to be had. This is good for business. But that the Asian American story in particular is just still not told enough and just still so misunderstood. And I think especially in business, there's like a misconception also that like Asian people are fine.
Oh yeah, I think that Asians are. We're minorities when it fits a certain narrative, and we're the majority when it fits the other narrative. We see this in so many different areas of our life, across education, across business, in movies, you name it. For the most part, it's like we're like the minority when like the minority metric needs to be met, but they haven't hired their head of diversity and inclusion officer.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a tough place to be, but also within the community itself, you have very disparate groups of individuals too. Those who also see it as a problem, and those who don't. And those who don't, they kind of float through life, being okay and wanting to support others as well, which is an amazing place to be. But also they haven't necessarily taken a look at their experiences, what they're saying, and how does that affect those around them who may or may not be struggling as well, and also those to come after them too.
Yeah, I would love to just have the financial services and fintech space have that type of awareness to be described as something different, to actually be that representation of these consumers and communities that we want to serve. I mean, you're talking about small businesses and entrepreneurs. If we don't have Asian American representation and leadership in the fintech space, how are those entrepreneurs supposed to see us as a proper tool, right? Financial tool for success? And that happens through that awareness. It is what you're doing in PR and what media does is it hits such like both sides, right? And it's such a bridge to getting the audience to see and understand, but also to getting the industry to see and understand. And that's so, exactly, I mean, it feels like a lot of responsibility.
It's good.
Put a lot of pressure on ourselves.
Oh, good. We can do it.
I mean, if our parents didn't prepare us for this moment in time to be like completely in on this. I mean, how do you see kind of the almost trajectory of this? Because like I said, I think we're still in like representation is there, but we're making progress, but then you see like a shitty headline come out.
Yeah.
About Asian Americans still in major media publications. You don't have to say who.
Ooh, triggering words.
And I mean, and I know you're deep in this, right? Like you are seeing it all the time, every day, especially given what you do.
Yeah. I mean, it's my job to read headlines, to dissect articles, and to understand who's writing about what and what is the editorial cadence on an annual basis. And this is another point where it really validates just the lack of awareness and I think care of the Asian American community as well, where there's definitely been insensitive headlines from some major publications around whether or not Asian Americans face any sort of discrimination in the United States. There's also been, social media actually has been amazing to kind of watch, because there has definitely been an increase in the past few years of activists who are much more open about just their feelings of these type of headlines. They want to make a change. The younger generation in particular, they are calling out racist, sexist comments, headlines, and, kind of putting people on watch, which is amazing. But it's just, I think financial services, though, I think to kind of go back to your question around how do we make financial services like an example of what could be done well, I think that financial services, I feel like they haven't quite exactly grasped the opportunity and just how much weight the community puts on the topic of money. For New Year's, we literally say, 恭喜发财 in Chinese, which means hope you have success and wealth in the new year. Yeah. Like, we give red envelopes. Like, money is tradition.
Like gold coins and things.
Gold coins. Yeah. And red envelopes filled with cash. That is the appropriate gift for any occasion. Like, money gets exchanged at any holiday, everything. It is everything. Generational wealth is everything. And so financial services in America need to kind of wake up to that, and they need to recognize how important money is to the Asian community, and that itself is a huge opportunity to tap into.
Yeah, and I mean, what a good point. Same in in the Philippines. I mean, if you go to like a traditional Filipino wedding, during the one of the like slow dances at the reception, they pin like money to the bride's, to her veil or whatever, or they're like pinning it to and it's like a fun thing. Like all of your relatives are like throwing $100 bills at you. I mean, looking forward to that day. For me personally, we like money.
Yes.
Yeah, but to kind of, it actually is so funny that you say this, because culturally, we use money as this like token, right, of appreciation. Meanwhile, like traditional American culture does not speak of
money.
Right. So how funny is that?
Yeah, funny about money. Yeah.
How weird is that? Yeah, and then it's like we should be a part of almost like the cultural conversation around money and money psychology, and having more discussions of that. But I also think from like the Asian American perspective, you're also still told to be pretty like, you're never taught to brag.
Right.
Which can make talking about like your salaries or talking about
yourself.
Yeah. Out there, hard. And then you tie in, what you're doing, right? You want someone to go out there and put themselves out there, stick their neck out, and talk about money.
And to represent right now, because there's a lack of representation, to represent a community. Like everything that I do for myself as well as the community, it's like I then become part of the representation, because to the people who are paying attention to what I'm doing, like what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis and what I say will then become a bit of their expectation too for the others in their lives as well.
Yeah.
And so we have to lead by example.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, how do you like encourage, I guess, more of that? Is it just like the day-to-day actions, especially with your clients, that maybe may feel like they're afraid or that type of thing? I mean, I always am thinking about like that. How do we continue to move forward? And then also, how do we get people that aren't a part of our, that aren't Asian American people to be brought in, like to understand that we're also a market worth serving. We're leaders worth telling the story, even if we've been historically quiet and silenced.
Those are two very big and very important
very
questions.
big questions.
Yes.
I think about it all the time.
Same. I wake up thinking about it. I go to sleep thinking about it. I'm like, I read about every single, Asian American HuffPost and NBC America article. I think that we all have to I think collectively we have to recognize that we have to do our own PR. That we have to learn and to put into practice of figuring out our story and then putting ourselves out there. Recognizing that every single little bit counts and that the impact of it will exponentially grow. If every single one of us in the community is doing our own PR and is able to take ownership of it. That would be huge. And I think for financial services businesses, they need to recognize that there is a huge market opportunity in this space. And I'm starting to see it in wealth management where numerous multilingual financial advisors are starting to build a practice serving the Chinese speaking, the Japanese speaking market in their in their specific cities. Because when it comes to American financial products, it's really hard for foreigners to understand the concept without understanding even the language. When we're starting to talk about target date funds and diversification of a stock portfolio, like my mom can't understand that. Right. When I try to explain life insurance to her, she's like, I don't know what that means, and I don't know when and where I'm supposed to get it. And so without any of this information kind of presented either, by people, but also in language that they can understand, it's really hard for them to really see value in it. And I think that has been a huge disconnect between the financial services world and minority populations in the U.S. when it comes to financial products to date. And I think this also comes down to communication and public relations as well.
And which is why how you're solving it.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I mean, and kind of back to the both sides thing, how is it tackling both? Because I can feel that too, and by that I mean you're being the bridge. I think that's something that the Asian American community is so incredible at, is almost bridging between the consumer, right, and then the business professional, and that's like a seat we are in. Also as just PR and media folks, but I don't know. I guess I'm thinking about that, kind of just breaking some of the cognitive dissonance around that. Yeah, just
what's the tie? How does this all tie? Because it all ties together. Yeah. I think that there's a consumer, there's a diverse consumer in America, and then you have the decision makers over here, and what are the bridges to get from consumer or to products that address the consumer from the decision makers, and how do you think about building for a more inclusive and sustainable community, really? And it comes down to having a diverse group of individuals who offer different perspectives, experiences, all having a seat at the table, being able to talk about their own unique experiences, being able to share. And so it really comes down to equality, and it comes down to equity. And it's about having a seat at the table. It's about talking about just how everybody's different, what matters, what doesn't, what's important for the different communities when it comes to product building, when it comes to marketing spend decisions, when it comes to translation needs, to PR and community outreach programs. But without having the right leaders in the room, without having those individuals in the room, it's really hard to like actually get those perspectives. And so right now, I think what PR and communications is able to do is to elevate those who have the potential to be in the room, to have those conversations, to represent their communities. And that's the power of PR, is to get those people out there and visible and to be found. And so that when people are looking for people to be at the table, they're easily accessible.
You're right. Yeah, that's that bridge and the like connectivity that I was trying to like speak to. So thank you. So to close this out, I actually kind of have one question for you. Thinking about was there like a media moment for you that made you go, oh my gosh, this is the first time I'm seeing myself represented in like American media? Was there like a movie or like a book or something? Was it Everything Everywhere All at Once? Gosh, I hope there was something before that. I have something in my mind. I'm going to share my answer after I ask you. Did you have one? Oh my
gosh. Actually, because, funny, I've never shared this before. So the only representation I really saw growing up was like the token Asian in TV shows. It also meant that like Lucy Liu was like one of the key icons I saw. Yeah. Charlie's Angels.
It's a good one.
Right? She really was the first time that I felt really seen.
Yeah.
Because she was dynamic. She was in America in a role that like was just so different than like, you know, Hidden Dragons or it's
Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragons.
Yep. So different and like a lot more accessible, if you will. And in such a badass role of being like a female spy.
Yeah.
Oh my God, like that was so cool.
Yeah, and one of the main characters.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was one of the first times that I really like saw what my future self could be.
Oh my gosh.
And so it actually inspired me to like dabble for about 6 months to see if I could become like
a spy,
you know, or actress.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Well, either way, I'm so happy that you're in financial services and fintech PR because oh my gosh, we need it. Well, my answer to that was going to be the Joy Luck Club. That for me was the first. It was I hadn't read the book until I was 15 years old, and it was surprisingly a school requirement. And I was the only Asian kid in my class, and I was like the only person jazzed about reading that book. I was like, oh my gosh, I know this. I was like annotating all over it. I was just like always raising my hand and answering questions in class. And my teacher was like, whoa, you're really into this book. And I'm like, I've literally never read a book so similar to my life ever. But yeah, and it made me realize like I'm not alone. There are other people having these experiences. And then when you have that validation, it's so much easier to move forward and be successful in your life. And I think that's also a huge part of what we're doing is helping people feel validated and helping their experiences be heard and pushing it forward. So, oh my gosh, Liang, thank you so much for joining me
Nicole.
On Humans of Fintech. Thanks for bearing with me while I had a couple of moments, but yes, thank you.
Thank you, Nicole.
Yeah. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. To hear our next story from another diverse leader, be sure to tune in next week. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to our show and give it a 5-star rating, as it helps our message reach more people who want to find belonging too. Thanks for tuning in.